All right, welcome in Broncos country as it is once again time for an episode of Building the Broncos. I'm your host, Carl Dumler, and joining me as always, Mr. Nick Kendell. Nick, how you doing, buddy?
Doing pretty well. Just lived through a pretty big storm front. Guys, it's Building the Broncos. Carl and I have to talk weather first. Guy from Iowa, guy from Kansas. We get some weather around here. But a golf ball-sized hail and recorded 95-mile-an-hour wind gusts. So that was pretty incredible, actually. The wife was hit and run, and she just got the car back, and then it hails. So I haven't gone out and checked yet because literally had to come out here and do this. Also, there's a second front coming through, so if you lose me, love you guys, but sometimes the weather wins.
Yeah. Now, we've had a lightning storm that struck a tree in our backyard about a month ago, tornado that came about 2 miles from town about 2 weeks ago. And so I'm just waiting to see what happens here in 2 weeks. Like every 2 weeks, we got something big coming through. So you just never know around here. And I know Iowa's pretty much the same thing. This time of year, it just gets crazy.
Yeah, it says, like, you check the forecast and it says, 40% chance of thunderstorms from 11 a.m. until 7 p.m. And it's like, well, you're probably going to get hit for like 10 minutes really hard, but they don't know when. Like, it's just going to pop up. So let's just cover our bases. Going to rain all day.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
All right. Well, now let's switch topics here. Let's get into some football because that's why everyone is here. Not really to talk about the weather. You can watch the Weather Channel if you want to do that. That's always going 24/7. But today we are going to be breaking down our players that maybe make the top 10 players of their positions in the NFL and looking at where they would rank on our list. And so everybody in the comments, if you want to get in your list of where you think some Bronco players are going to be, where you disagree with us, our listeners, if you want to add us on Twitter, you can do that. You can find me at Carl Dumler, MHH, Nick at Nick Kendell, MHH, and of course the podcast Twitter account at BTB Football Pod. Subscribe to our show wherever you listen to podcasts and leave us a rating. Also, don't miss out on all of our great content at milehighhuddle.com of the Maven Coalition and Sports Illustrated. Also know that our podcast is powered by Overtime Media. Yeah, I like this question. What will go wrong for Carl next? Reach out to him on Twitter. Flooding of my basement, lightning, tornado. Yeah, you never know. I'm waiting for the locusts and yeah. Anyway, yeah, I can't win. Yeah, Garrett Bowles is a shoo-in for top 5.
Oh, man. Oh, well, I guess we should just start it off. But first, let's look at the chat here. Ernie Mays coming in, number 1 comment, Denver Broncos are the greatest. Ernie, always appreciate you coming in and talking to us. We got Toy Mafia with some emojis in I think that's Vegeta there. If you guys can decipher that, then go for it. I see a lot of horse, chicken padlocks, but not today. Kenneth Booker coming in. What's up, fellows? Obviously, Dennis Elliott. Good to see you, Dennis. Robert Kitchens. Good to see you. 10th comment. Go Broncos. So 10th comment, that's a perfect way to start. Broncos in the top 10 of their positions groups in the NFL. And guys, Drew Lock didn't make it. Sorry to see people out there. Yeah, Drew Lock's not a top 10 quarterback already.
That's not my list. Just kidding.
We're haters. No, wait and see. Maybe, got it. If we can be talking about Drew Lock as a top 10 quarterback a year from now, the season, A, there was a season. B, the season went incredibly well. So fingers crossed with that. But I guess the first position we have to talk about potential top 10s would be running backs. So, Carl, how do you want to do this? Do you want to just go through our list, or do you want to just kind of unveil the curtain and say, oh, he made it, or this is where I rank Melvin Gordon / Philip Lindsay?
Well, I'd say let's just go through our list here.
Okay.
And so I'll start with my number 1 because I think we know the Bronco running backs are not going to be number 1. So I think it's easier to kind of go through that direction. I have Saquon Barkley number 1.
Okay. Me too.
Okay, there we go.
Maybe a little biased there because I saw him live, and that was probably one of the greatest games I ever saw live. But, God, hey, everyone take a drink. Nick already talking about the Hawkeyes. But the Iowa Hawkeyes played Barkley and Christian McCaffrey in like back-to-back seasons, and they just killed them. So.
And let me get this in there, this caveat. Got that word right this time. For the show, I did not get that word right. Nick had to give me an English lesson.
Cabot.
Yeah, Cabot.
What is that?
I'm going to the Cabot.
Yeah.
But the thing here is we are imagining that these players are healthy because Saquon Barkley healthy it's hard to argue that somebody's better than him.
Yeah.
I mean, receiving, rushing, the guy's got it all. He's fast. He's strong. He's just everything you'd want in a running back. So, yes, him at number one is with that caveat that he is healthy. That has been an issue for him. Number two, I have Derrick Henry.
Really?
Yep.
Wow. Well, this is going to be interesting. Derrick Henry did not make my top 10
Woo!
because he does absolutely nothing in the pass game.
Okay.
Nothing. Okay. And that's just too important. Like he can't catch. He can't run routes. Like he just doesn't do it.
So part of it for me is you watch him in the playoffs. He was that team in the playoffs. There's very few times you see a running back be that dominant, especially, every team knows, hey, Derrick Henry's going to get the ball 30 times this game. And he still was a dominant figure in those games. And throughout most of the season, except against the Broncos, he was just, again, the guy that carried the team. Now, if I'm thinking of 2020 and is this guy still going to be that kind of production? I don't think so. You don't usually carry that many times and then produce at that same level the next season. That just doesn't happen in the NFL.
Yeah.
So I will throw that in there.
I think there was a study done, though, that Derrick Henry, to start the season, he was not that good. Granted, Mariota was part of the reason for that. But the offensive line really started to gel in that second half of the season. I think Taylor Lewan had a suspension to start the year.
Yep.
And then also they were trying to break in Roger Saffold, who was incredible this season for them. And then by the second half of the season, that offensive line was doing excellent. They were one of the best play action teams in football, having a good mobile quarterback that was testing it deep. And the offensive line in general was blocking much better for him. So Derrick Henry, I think I definitely did it to be a little bit edgy to not have him in my top 10. Like there's an argument for it, but it's just because he brings absolutely nothing in the pass game. Okay. And I can't have that. So my number two is Christian McCaffrey. Talk about bringing stuff in the pass game. I think that he's just as good in the slot. He might even be a top 10 receiver if you're talking about slot ability. But I have him at running back. Number three, Ezekiel Elliott. I'm guessing you have McCaffrey at 3.
I have McCaffrey at number 3. Yep.
Okay. Number 4. After that, it gets kind of dicey. I think 1, 2, 3, in my opinion, pretty easily is Barkley, McCaffrey, Elliott. After that, you can argue a bunch of people. I'll just run
4 for
Elliott's 4. Okay. Yep. My number 4 is Dalvin Cook. I've had a good season. I thought he much better in the pass game than I thought. Number 5, Nick Chubb. I think he's a pretty interesting player. They went attack that offensive line this year. A lot of hype around Baker Mayfield, but I think that offense is going to run through Nick Chubb as much as anything, especially with Stefanski. I can never remember the Polish.
Yeah.
Stefanski. So number 5 there, Nick Chubb. Number 6, I have Joe Mixon. If he wasn't playing behind one of the worst offensive lines in football, I think he'd be incredibly talented or incredibly good. He might be a guy that I target really hard in fantasy football this year. Number 7, I have Josh Jacobs. I know Raiders, but the first round pick on him, he's the guy who can just do everything well. He's not a home run hitter, but he's a great blocker. He's a great receiver, good vision, good balance, blah, 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 blah. Number 8, I have Alvin Kamara. I love Alvin Kamara, but last year he was dinged, and I'm worried about that if he's going to be the same. Once running backs kind of start to get those lower body injuries, sometimes they can fall off pretty fast. So Alvin Kamara, I have 8, even though I do love what he brings in that pass game. Number 9, I have Aaron Jones. And number 10, most underrated running back in football, in my opinion, Austin Eckler. So Philip Lindsay and Melvin Gordon do not make my top 10. They're just outside of it, but that's my top 10. So sorry I went on a ramble there. I just wanted to get them all out.
No, you're fine. We pretty much have the same. After Ezekiel, I went Dalvin Cook, Nick Chubb, Joe Mixon, just like you did. And then I do have Aaron Jones. I know he's not as big of a receiving option.
I had him at 9.
Oh, you did? Okay. Sorry, I missed. I do have Alvin Kamara at number 10. And then a guy that I did include, but it is again with that idea that he's healthy and now being second year back, Le'Veon Bell.
Yeah.
I still, before he did his whole sit out for a year thing, there was an argument he was the best running back in football. And I think the Jets did a lot to improve that offensive line. They still don't have as many weapons as you would like, obviously. Sam Darnold being now another year in the system. I think Le'Veon Bell could really explode onto the scene this year. And he's still only 28. Like, it feels like he's been in the NFL forever.
Yes.
But he's only 28. Again, he's not had as many carries lately as some of these other guys have had. I just think that he still deserves to be on that list just because of some of the past, what he's brought to the NFL. Because, again, he's a great receiver. He's got some of the best vision and patience of any running back I've ever watched. Now, part of that was Pittsburgh offensive line gave him that opportunity, but I still think he's one of those guys that deserves to be there.
You know me. We've spent way too much time talking about running back. Gosh, what are we going to talk about? Long snappers next? But let's get to the chat here for a second. Talon Vamp of the LSU coming in there. Good to see you, Talon. Hopefully I'm pronouncing your name correctly. We got the original Dizzy D. I don't recognize you, but keep grinding and surviving Mile High Soldier style. So thank you for coming in, Dizzy. And we also have a question here from Sebastian Dispo. Will the NFL happen this year? Sebastian, if I had that answer for you, I would be a more powerful and wealthy man than I am. So I guess hope for the best, prepare for the worst. Who knows what's going to happen? I couldn't predict, 2 weeks from now what's going to happen at the state of the world at this point. So I'm not going to guess that the NFL is going to happen. If it does happen, there's a possibility that I've heard rumors that they might only play an 8-game season. So like every other week kind of thing. But who knows? I'm not even sure if we're going to freaking get to September as a planet. Gosh, is there going to be an NFL season? I don't know.
Yeah, everybody's guess is as good as anybody's at this point. That both players and teams want to have something happen because obviously that's a lot of money to lose.
Yeah.
On both sides. I mean, both have a lot at risk here, but you're also seeing a lot of players coming out saying, I'm not playing if things are not safe. And hard to blame them for that. But a lot of these guys also know that they have a lot of responsibility taking care of families and friends. And so a lot of times they take on too many. But I don't know. We'll cross that bridge when we get there, I guess. That's the thing right now is 2 weeks in today's world is a lifetime.
Mm-hmm. And I don't want to go down too far down this rabbit hole, but since YouTube doesn't want us to talk about it without getting us dinged, but it does affect minorities at a higher rate, just disproportionately. So that's something to think about in regards to opening up the NFL. So we got Darian coming in here with the question. Does Mahomes have a LeBron-type influence in the NFL now? I don't think anybody has the LeBron-type influence because LeBron, it's not only for LeBron, it's not only the United States, but it's a global brand. They know LeBron. Mahomes is known, but he's not beloved worldwide. I do think that he can become the face of the NFL if he isn't already, which sucks. But as far as LeBron goes, LeBron is his own thing. He's literally probably the biggest known sports brand right now.
And I would say also it has helped. He's been in some of the major cities where he's got major media conglomerates checking him out, where Kansas City, I love Kansas City, been there plenty of times, but it's still not the major media area. Now the NFL, it is big, but it's not quite the same.
Carl, did you kick my puppy?
I'm
for
sorry.
all the bad luck that you had? Oh my gosh. Oh, there we go. Terry Randall coming in again. Next beer fund, hashtag state of being. Thank you very much, Terry. Good to see you there rocking the mic.
I like the picture. Yeah, that's a nice one.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Here he is asking again. Push an old lady. I'm not sure what I did. I really don't know. We'll find out soon enough, I guess, if things keep going down a bad trail here. But might need to call an exorcist or something to clean my house. This house is clean. Or I don't know what they all say in that movie, but I don't know.
And we got Kenneth Booker always coming in with the questions. 2 running backs that were destined for greatness but got their careers cut short. What do you think would have had a better career, TD or Bo Jackson? We're still talking about running backs. God bless it. But TD or Bo Jackson, it depends on the system. If you put Bo Jackson in that 90s style zone blocking scheme where nobody really knew how to prepare for it because it was so new, it was kind of like the Princeton basketball offense when it first came to be, just so different. Then I'd probably go Bo Jackson. But if you're talking about the system as well, TD's definitely one to talk about. But Bo Jackson is just such a freak. I love TD. I don't think it's a strike against him to take Bo Jackson in regards to these 2 players.
Yeah, I would take Bo. The athletic ability is something that, honestly, even still today's NFL, I'm not sure if we've seen somebody as athletically gifted as him.
Yeah,
And that's saying something for a guy clear back then to still be the top of the level. I know we don't have quite the numbers. There's a lot of rumors of what he was able to do, but you saw it on the field too. The guy just ran over people, ran around people, ran past. He just did everything. And in today's NFL, he would just be an absolute star.
Yeah, so we have a lot of people saying Christian McCaffrey is number one. Here's a question from James Campbell. What puts Barkley ahead of Christian McCaffrey for you both? I think Barkley is the bigger, faster, stronger guy. I mean, that's just really what it comes down to. I think that he probably, because of his stature, I would guess he'd have a longer career. Now, granted, would that make sense? I think Christian McCaffrey, if he's going to, at his stature, if he's going to play the next 10 years in the NFL, I think at some point you're going to have to see him where he's getting 10 carries and 10 receptions a game. And he has another guy who's really coming in and carrying the load. I don't see that the case with Barkley. I think Barkley can be your alpha and omega at the running position. So I see somebody else say that it's called running back, not catching back. Touche, but hashtag don't even run the ball. I won't even field one.
and that's part of the evolution of the position.
Yeah.
It really was back in the 90s. It was, hey, if you give this guy 30 carries a game, that's your offense.
Yeah.
For today's NFL, it really is about the ability to have a running back that can threaten every area of the field. And this is why we've been so at times harsh towards Phillip Lindsay. Like I love Phillip Lindsay. I love what he can do. We got Phillip Lindsay mini-me here today if Nick would ever show his hair. But because he's not a catching option at the running back position, it really cues teams into what the Broncos are wanting to do on offense. It doesn't mean that they won't pass from that, but it just means that they also limit then their offense by eliminating one player that can be a great receiving option.
Yeah, that's a good point. None of the 49ers backs. You probably guys heard me say it leading up to the NFL draft, but running backs are as good as the system and offensive line in front of them. And there is no better running system / run blocking offense. Well, arguably run blocking offensive line, but no running system as good, especially blocking the edges. Because when you got the fullback's name, who's escaping me right now, Juszczyk and Kittle blocking the edge, you can get some outside zones going on. And that means sometimes that inside lane is going to be there. So the cutback lane. So none of the 49ers backs made it. Maybe you can make an argument for Mostert. I know that he just demanded a trade because they wouldn't give him a new contract. But I don't know. I think that's more about the system than the actual running back talent. It's like the days when the Broncos were getting Reuben Drones and Peyton Hillis and all those guys rushing for 1,000 yards because that Shanahan running system was so effective in that way of maximizing those guys. So, Carl, I think we should probably move on now because we're already getting a little bit long. Wide receiver here. With running back. Goodness gracious. Carl, give me your top 5 wide receivers.
All right, let me get my list pulled up here. So number 1, DeAndre Hopkins.
Okay.
Number 2, Michael Thomas. Number 3, Julio Jones. Number 4, Mike Evans. And number 5, Tyreek Hill.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's pretty darn good. I have number 1, Julio Jones. Number 2, Tyreek Hill. Number 3, DeAndre Hopkins. Number 4, Mike Evans. And number 5, Michael Thomas.
Well, so same 5.
Same 5, which is echo chamber, maybe good, but also a little echo chambery. I guess what makes you go with DeAndre Hopkins number 1? I would have said DeAndre Hopkins is number 1, but I feel like he's lost a step of that separation. And that's just he's not as – he's never been a guy who separates like crazy. That's never been his game. But I just feel like even still he's lost even a step of it has made a difference. So that's a reason that he was traded this past season, not as valuable there. And he'll be good this year. I mean, he's still in the top 5. I just think that Julio Jones is still the freakier freak. And I would get him because I think he can play anywhere where Hopkins is more defined role.
And I get that. I guess it's just he was one of those guys that I know I really misevaluated because of not showing – like I like guys who separate. Yeah. That's always been my thing. And so when I see a guy that doesn't show that as much in college, and then I'm going, well, that doesn't improve when you get to the NFL. That's only going to get worse kind of thing. But he has just the hands are off the charts. Like Larry Fitzgerald's the only guy that I could say has better hands, in my opinion. He's a better route runner than a lot of people give him credit for. And he just, I don't know, he makes plays that I don't see other wide receivers making. Julio Jones, I mean, he deserves to be right there. He's one of those guys that year in, year out. I mean, he's putting up, 1,400 yards a year? And it's sometimes like the quietest 1,400 because the team around him is terrible. Yeah. And I feel bad that he hasn't had quite the opportunity to showcase because he's not a talker. He's not much of a talker like an OBJ, who honestly has not lived up to the hype as much over the last few years.
Yeah.
And, those top three for me, they're real close and they all have different games. That's the nice thing is there is a variety there. I mean, Michael Thomas, he's just catches everything, but it's not like huge yards. It's just lots of catches. Hopkins, I mean, can catch anything thrown his direction, even when he's triple covered. And then, of course, Julio Jones, just the freak.
Yeah. Good. I think it's interesting that we have the same top five, but what's more interesting is 6 through 10.
Yeah.
So I'll let you go first, just because I want to have the angry reacts. If you probably know what that means, folks, but you can go first.
All right. So I'm going to go Chris Godwin.
Wow. Okay.
He had, incredible season last year. One of those guys that showed incredible separation. Just really exploded onto the scene. Amari Cooper, I think he's still one of the more underrated wide receivers in the NFL. He still has every once in a while some problems with drops, but essentially, this is who you want Jerry Jeudy to be. This is who you want him to become because he's that talented of a wide receiver. Kenny Golladay, number 8 for me. I do have Odell Beckham Jr. here at number 9. I go back and forth on him because the talent's there.
Yeah.
But just I wonder about the mental side of it, of how he handles himself. And the number 10, I do have Cortland Sutton. I went back and forth of whether to put him on this list after one season, but just what he did with 3 different quarterbacks and pretty much no other weapon to speak of, and teams pretty much saying if you eliminate Sutton, you win the game. And yet he still would go out and make plays. I mean, some of his catches this last year are some of the best I've seen from a Denver Bronco, probably since Lloyd back in 2010. Mm-hmm. He made some ridiculous catches that season.
Yeah. But
Cortland Sutton this year, that was what he brought to the team.
Okay, well, that's pretty good. You have 2 guys in your list that weren't on mine, so that'll be interesting to see. My number 6, I did have Amari Cooper. Still I think he's 25 years old, maybe just turned 26, but incredibly good. The statistical difference for that Cowboys offense and for Dak Prescott pre and post Amari Cooper is, that tells the tale. And now that they have a number 2 to play opposite him, I'm really curious to see what Cooper can do. I think Michael Gallup's a good receiver there for Dallas, but the reason Michael Gallup's so good is because Amari Cooper is the straw that stirs the drink, so to speak. So he's my number 6. Number 7, I have Odell Beckham Jr. Wasn't as good last year. I don't think the offense was great. This year will be a really telling season for him, but the talent is immense. So I do have him number 7. He's had those really incredible years, and the type of receiver he is ones that I'd want to build around. Explosive, but still really good at the contested catch, can do yak or separate vertically. Number 8, I have Devontae Adams. I was surprised you didn't have to have Devontae Adams in your top 10. Plays a big slot, but also some X there for the Packers. I think he's talking about a guy that stirs the drink, so to speak. No wide receivers talent around those Packers for guys besides Devontae Adams. Valdez Scantling, Equanimous St. Brown. There's a reason that Aaron Rodgers was ticked off. I don't know what I'm allowed to say, customer-wise, ticked off that they did not bring some weapons on that team. Devontae Adams is alone there. Number 9, I have Chris Godwin. And number 10, I have Stephon Diggs, who roasted the Broncos last year. Really good. I'm not sure how he's going to be this year with Josh Allen, but I think Stephon Diggs is still immensely talented. And just to talk about Cortland Sutton, I have him at number 12. I want to see one more good season with him. I want to see a season where there's other mouths to feed around him, just seeing how he can do this year. But I had Kenny Golladay at 11. So Cortland Sutton's right there. Honestly, you could make an argument for him for anywhere. I would say, 10, 11, 12, you could put him there. I just thought maybe be a little bit contrarian. And because those other guys have proven it more, I gave them the tiebreaker.
Okay. Well, I did see this from Bill here. Carl, did you forget Devontae Adams? I did not forget Devontae Adams. I went back and forth on him a little bit. Something that I guess just keeps sticking with me about him a little bit is you can tell the guy is just uber talented. but the stats haven't been there. Can you tell me how many 1,000-yard seasons he's had in his career?
0?
1.
1? Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's
1 out of 6.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. You're going to make me go back and watch him. So I definitely think Sutton is banging on the door there, but we will see what happens. We have one guy's up in here. Godwin is recency bias, and Cooper's either really good or invisible. That's kind of the case with wide receivers, guys. I mean, you can say that about – go back and look at the game-by-game of Julio Jones, or any wide receiver. There's some games where they don't have it that day, or they're not idolized, or not idolized. They're not prioritized in the game plan. So unless you only have one guy, but Godwin or Cooper, they can at least go back and lean on Elliott, so to speak, and Gallup last year. I mean, a lot of teams shaded coverage over to Cooper because Cooper is incredibly good, and Gallup 8. So I don't know. I think Cooper definitely belongs in the conversation, and how he wins is just so translatable.
Yeah. The Godwin one, I understand. Some people are kind of going, hey, maybe one year wonder. There's just a lot of things that translate well, especially to working with Tom Brady.
Yeah.
His ability to separate is something that Tom Brady absolutely adores. I mean, you look at who he's left, Wes Welker, Edelman here over the last, 10 years kind of thing. He loves guys that separate early. And Chris Godwin, that's what he does. So I just see him being the guy that maybe benefits the most from having Tom Brady there. I mean, even though he had a great season last year, I still think he's going to really have another great season this year. And yeah, there's a couple other guys here, Sutton at least being top 15, which is encouraging. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what he can do with one, having other weapons that take attention, and 2, having consistency at quarterback. I mean, those are 2 things you need as a wide receiver. You're desperate for that. You need other people to help you out as a wide receiver. You can't do it on your own. Obviously, I mean, Larry Fitzgerald, look at him. Probably one of the top 10 most talented wide receivers in NFL history. But he's struggled to put up some stats sometimes just because he has had nobody. Yeah,
unless you have a team that's just force-feeding the guy and you're going to have a lot of turnovers and inefficiency, kind of like the Detroit Lions with Calvin Johnson years, then it really depends on the guys around you and your opponents. So wide receiver is so important in today's game, but it's still a quarterback-dependent position.
Yeah. AJ Green. Part of the problem there is, again, 1, he's got a rookie quarterback. Yeah. 2, the injury history. I mean, the guy's been hurt, the last 3 years?
Constantly.
Yeah.
A rubber band at this point.
Yeah. So it is hard to know exactly what he is. These other guys, we at least know exactly what they are.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. So I guess going back on the list, what does Courtland Sutton need to do to enter the top 10 for sure, and maybe even push for the top 5? What does that season look like?
Well, I would say if he wants top 5, he's got to at least go 1,400 and probably 12 touchdowns.
1,400 might be a tall ask for all the mouths to feed, and who knows how high volume-wise the passing offense is going to be for Denver.
I mean, when I'm looking at that top 5 list, though,
yeah,
that's what those guys do. They put up 1,400 yards and about 10 to 12 touchdowns at least. And so that's the step he has to take to get there. Just to make it in the top 10, I would say he just has to maybe do just a hair more next year, stats-wise. But otherwise, I mean, some of these guys, it wouldn't surprise me to see him pass them. Kenny Golladay, I could see him passing. Odell Beckham, again, if things really start falling apart there in Cleveland once again, yeah, it shouldn't be hard to pass him. Chris Godwin, as much as I like him, he could have that season where he kind of shows he is that one-hit wonder. So I would just say it is about that consistency. I mean, most of these guys, that is the big thing, especially the top 5. All those guys have done it multiple years and put up big stats. Amari Cooper's put up big stats consistently. That 6 or 10 group, though, it is a little bit more projecting than anything else.
And before we move on to interior offensive line, just for a quick second to talk about that. But where did you have Michael Thomas? Where did you have Michael Thomas?
I had him number 2.
Okay. I had him number 5, and while I do really respect the game and the statistical output, I did knock him a bit for how slot dependent he is and just the lack of explosive plays. He is a guy who gets how much of it is Michael Thomas? Obviously he's great, but also how much of it is the type of offense and the opportunity.
It's a big part. Of my top 5, he is the most limited by his skill set.
Okay.
But what his skill set is and how he uses it, top notch. So yeah, you put him in a system where he's required to go downfield and make plays. Yeah, he's not going to thrive. Some of these other guys, they could do stuff over the middle, stuff deep, all that kind of stuff. But again, there's nobody that's doing it better right now of making those quick catches, being consistent day in, day out, every week, being the same guy and just making that offense move. I mean, that's exactly what his job is, and no one's doing it better.
All right. Well, that's I dinged him a bit for that. I mean, I'd rather have Mike Evans on the outside or Tyreek Hill's speed. Julio Jones is everything, or DeAndre Hopkins ball skills. But okay, I thought that was an interesting one. That's the player that for a lot of these players, we say it in the draft every year that landing spot is key, situation's key, offensive fit is key, and Michael Thomas is one that he's good. And if you talk any smack about him on Twitter, he will find it and come back at you because he is his pretty thin skin, so to speak. But yeah, that's okay. I just was curious about that one. Interior offensive line. At first, I didn't really consider it for Graham Glasgow and Dalton Reisner, but I think there is actually a conversation to be had there. So yeah, I guess just to be fully transparent here, guys, we did not rank the interior offensive line. Personally, I did not, but I have Athlon Sports here, top 10 guards. And I think Graham Glasgow, there's an argument for him to be made in the bottom half of the top 10. So number 1 they have is Quentin Nelson. Number 2 they have Zach Martin, who would be my number 1. Number 3 they have Brandon Brooks, who tore his ACL. Maybe it was Achilles. Anyway, okay, yeah, it was his Achilles torn. So dropped out there. Joe Thuney, also on the list here. Brandon Scherf, David DeCastro, Richie Incognito, who was incredible last year for Las Vegas, Joel Batinio, Kevin Zeitler, Ali Marpet, and then 11 is Shaq Mason. So if you want to move those guys all up, that'd be fine. I think I would take all those guys over Graham Glasgow, but you could make an argument for Graham Glasgow there in that 10th spot. If you were hit for him versus Shaq Mason, could go either way.
Yeah, I mean, some of these guys, Kevin Zeitler, he's been good. I think it would be a close call between the two of them, depending on the offense and what they're called to do. I think also part of it for Graham Glasgow that makes it hard is he's been playing back and forth between center and guard. And so he's had to kind of adjust going back and forth. And so I'm interested to see if the Broncos leave him at guard, which he played outstanding at last year, if they can leave him at that and just let him develop at that one position, how much of a difference that'll make seeing him be more consistent as a player.
Yeah, then that's a good point. So Chet, let us know, where do you think Graham Glasgow would be? Obviously the Broncos paid him to be really good, and the Broncos took Cushenberry. They have Mike Munchak. So I think a year from now, there's definitely a chance. I think Glasgow is the oldest player on the offense as well. I think he's 28, maybe the oldest starter. But he's still coming into his prime. So I think he definitely has a chance to be in the top 10. Now, I could see Reisner also entering that top 10 a year from now. He did get injured last year. He hit the rookie wall, was not as good after that. But he started off really good. And I think this season could be very good for Reisner as well. So, I mean, dare I say the Broncos could have one of the better guard duos in the NFL next season.
Yep. It's hard to disagree with. I mean, Reisner, when he was healthy, like you said, he was showing real promise, especially for a rookie surrounded by Garrett Bowles on one side, McGovern on the center position, which is not his natural position, and yet he was still looking pretty good. And yeah, year 2, being in the NFL, being healthy, I'm excited to see what the guy can do for sure. I do wonder a little bit still with a rookie on his right and Bowles still on his left, how much that's going to hurt him. Because I kind of look at what year was it? Was it the 2011, I think, season? The Broncos had, who was it at guard? But they had Clady on one side and a really strong center. Cooper. Was it Cooper? Okay. Yeah, I can't remember. Anyway, Then the next year, Clady went down with injury, and you just saw this huge difference, this huge drop off in what they showed. And so the talent around an offensive lineman matters. I mean, that communication of, hey, they are bringing stunts at us. Be prepared for this. I'm going to shift off to this side. You're going to shift off to that side. Makes a difference. When you don't have that communication, it makes you look sometimes really bad.
Yeah, and coming back to the wide receivers here, Joseph Malinowski, good. Even if Cortland Sutton doesn't make the top 5, it could be a good thing because that means Drew Lock has too many weapons to feed. And that's a good point. I think if Cortland Sutton puts up incredible stats next year, like let's say the 1,400 yards like you talked about, Carl, I think that means that something went wrong, honestly. I think that means that Judy or Fant or something just went haywire and they had to force feed him those targets because I can't see him getting that many yards efficiently. I guess there is a reality where that happens, but I think it's more likely that you have an injury where they force feed him.
If the Broncos offense is absolutely more explosive than we imagine, then it's not a big deal. I mean, you look at the Chiefs, they have a lot of mouths to feed and they still get them their yards. Yeah. But that's also, they have, again, one of the most explosive offenses in football. So it makes sense. But yeah, otherwise, if they don't have that, if they're not a team that's scoring 30 points a game and he's still getting 1,400 yards, then yes, you're right. Others have failed at their duties.
Yeah, and James correcting me here. Bowles and Spencer are older than Glasgow. Bowles being older than Glasgow hurts. Does that mean Juwan James is older than Glasgow too? Because Juwan James is only like a week younger. So maybe Glasgow isn't the oldest, but I could have sworn that he was the oldest when I read it. Spencer's not a starter. Spencer might not even make this team. So, meh. But let's see. Moving on. Actually, station identification, guys. You're watching Building the Broncos. I am Nick Kendell, along with Carl Dumler. Follow us on Twitter. Add us on Twitter. Harass us on Twitter. Be nice. I'm just kidding. Don't harass us. You can harass me, actually. Don't harass Carl. He's a saint. Follow the account at BTB Football Pod. Also important, guys, we reached 7,000 likes or subscribers on YouTube. Trying to get to 10,000 by the season. Subscribe, like, share. Also go to iTunes, leave us a rating and a comment. We really do appreciate that. And guys, look how sexy this hat is. It just hailed here, but guess what? I didn't get a concussion because I had my awesome hat on. Disclaimer, don't wear these hats if it's hailing out. You might get a concussion. Not built for that. But go to huddleuppod.com, get your swag on. You get the beautiful Building the Broncos hat. I absolutely adore this hat. I'm afraid to wear it outside. Anything with white, nope, sticks in here. But it's covering up my, let's say, unfortunate hairdo right now. The wife can't even look at me right now. She's like, go get a haircut. I'm like, well, when are you going to schedule me a haircut appointment? So I guess we'll see if that happens here soon. I haven't gotten a cut since March, so it's looking pretty unfortunate. And I keep seeing people say, show us the hair, Nick. Stick around to the end of the episode. I'll take off the hat and give a little shake for you guys, for all the ladies in the chat. But all right, moving now to recap first. Unfortunately, I did not have any top 10 players for the Broncos on the offensive side of the ball. We didn't even talk about where Phillip Lindsay or Melvin Gordon would make it. They're in that 11 to 20 range. Both of them together make a top 10 back. I wish one of them was a little better in the receiving game, but both of them together, you essentially have a bell cow top 10 back. So that's good. Cortland Sutton just missed the top 10. You could make an argument for him beating the top 10. I wouldn't fight you. I just thought some guys with better track records deserved the lean that way. And then guard, I might have talked myself into Graham Glasgow being there. It's close. The same as Cortland Sutton. He's right there. When you include centers and guards, he doesn't make the list. But if you're talking just guards, it's close. It's very close. So moving on now. Edge position. Carl, give me your top 5. Honestly, I had a really hard time with the edge position. I really did. I could not pick who was like number 1, number 2. I don't know. This one I did not feel very good about.
Yeah. If people made an argument for others being top 1, it wouldn't surprise me. But I have TJ Watt at the top.
Okay.
Nick Bosa, number 2.
Wow.
This guy, that Super Bowl, he was the reason the 49ers should have won that game. Like if they won, he's the MVP. There's no questioning that in my mind. He was just so dominant and he just improved as the season went on. I think he's going to explode even more this season. Just downright impressive. I was really shocked how much I really liked watching him. Chandler Jones, number 3. he never gets the credit. This guy is one of the best sack masters in the NFL. And honestly, on his way to the Hall of Fame. And nobody's talking about him. Nobody's talking about what this guy has done in his career. Just year in, year out, this guy continues to produce at high levels. Number 4, Myles Garrett. Last year, he was on pace for a sack a game, really starting to turn that corner to see his athleticism match up with his football abilities until, of course, he decided to be an idiot and do his thing. And then number 5, I do have Joey Bosa. So the Bosa brothers both made my top 5. Again, it's amazing watching those two. Neither of them are those absolute athletic freaks, but they just have some of the best technical skills in the game. Their hands are so heavy. They win with those fights, those punches, and just understanding leverage and how, just everything. If you're not the most athletically gifted and you're an edge player, these are the two guys I would tell you, go watch these guys because this is how you win then.
Yeah, good points here. Actually, I had a really hard time with this one. So can we actually run through it real quick? Give me your top 5. You have good analysis after it, but otherwise I'm going to forget.
Okay. TJ Watt, Nick Bosa, Chandler Jones, Myles Garrett, Joey Bosa.
Okay. My number 1, I thought, again, just trying to be a hot take lord here. I went with Chandler Jones as my number 1. I know that last year he was one of the very few defenders who played over 1,000 1,000 total defensive snaps, which is unheard of. That's incredible. Blame, I guess, how bad that Arizona defense is behind him. Blame the air raid on the other side of the ball. But Chandler Jones, I think you could make an argument for number 1. You probably never see it elsewhere. And you talk about being underrated. I thought this was a chance to jump on him. He's that good. I think that, it's worth giving him a shout out for that number 1 position. Number 2, I have Khalil Mack. I'm not faulting him for how horrible Mitchell Trubisky is. I'm not faulting him for the scheme change. He was still really good last year. He's coming off of an incredible season. I know that there's a little bit of Von Miller versus Khalil Mack animosity, so to speak. But Mack, younger, power player as well, which seems to be the direction teams are going right now. Just because you can send less pass rushers in and still have gap integrity instead of in counter position to those more finesse rushers. And then so that's my 1 and 2. Number 3, I have Myles Garrett. Absolute freak, probably the freakiest freak pass rusher in the game. If I was picking any pass rusher to start a team with right now, I'd probably pick Myles Garrett. Maybe Chase Young, but he hasn't proved it yet. But Myles Garrett's incredible. Number 4, I have TJ Watt. Really good as well. More finesse than power, but want to see another season with him. Doesn't have the same tools as Garrett, but really good. And then number 5, I have Von Miller. Actually, I have Von Miller in my top 5. Last year, he was really good still. I don't think people give him enough credit for how good he was. Finished with 77 total pressures, despite Bradley Chubb not being there for 3/4 of the season, despite the issues at the Broncos cornerback position. Von Miller was still incredibly good. So I think Von Miller is still a top 5 pass rusher.
Okay. He made my top 10.
Well, let's hear it. Let's hear 6.
All right. So then I have Daniel Hunter, Von Miller.
7.
And Khalil Mack, Frank Clark, Shaq Barrett.
You have Frank Clark as an edge rusher?
Yeah, he's edge.
Oh, Jesus. I was thinking Kenny Clark.
Yeah, okay. No, I was like, what are you talking about?
You're right. Okay, I'm very concerned. Cam Jordan, Carl. Where's Cam Jordan?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I guess part of me, because I went back and forth of him and Shaq Barrett.
Okay.
Because part of me is thinking Shaq Barrett, a lot of his sacks were a little bit fluky last season. If you really watch back, a lot of his were unblocked, but at the same time, leaving the number 1 sack person from last season off the list seems kind of almost like, how could you do that?
Yeah. I think once people found out his fastball, so to speak, he didn't show a secondary move, and then he kind of fell off. So I think you're fair. I don't have him in my top 10 either. I know we all love Shaq Barrett, but I need to see it another season. It's kind of that one-hit wonder thing. I got to see it again, unless they have that draft pedigree as well, because then I've seen him in college as well. They've also dominated the college level. So my number 6, I have Cam Jordan. My number 7, I have Joey Bosa. Number 8, I have Daniel Hunter. Good to see him get some respect. And honestly, for how this list has gone so far, I think you could make an argument for any of these guys being number 1. Honest to God, you could shuffle any of these ones, and I wouldn't argue with you too much. So Daniel Hunter at 8. One that I'm surprised you did not have listed here. Carl, who was the number 1 pass rusher last year in terms of total pressures?
I guess I don't know.
Zadarius Smith.
Okay, so he was another one that I considered.
Okay, dominated.
Yeah, but it's one of those, and maybe I should have had the same thought with Shaq Barrett a little bit too. You look at his other seasons before this one, they were good, not great.
Yeah.
And so I did question a little bit how much of this is just he had a team that was playing with the lead a lot, and so he was able to be that guy that got a lot of pressures, went against some pretty average quarterbacks at times to get a lot of those pressures. I don't know. Maybe I just talked myself out of that and didn't use the same criteria across the board like I should have.
Yeah. Well, last year he was just so incredibly good. I know Shaq Barrett had more. I believe he had more sacks, but when Zadarius Smith leads the NFL in pressures, which is a far more predictive statistic with 93, I think that's impossible to ignore. I mean, that's impossible to ignore. So, and he kicked the Broncos' butts too. So I feel like I couldn't leave him out. And then number 10, I have Nick Bosa. Honestly, you can make an argument for any of them being 1 through 10. Slot them how you want. I'd be fine with it. Okay, Bradley Chubb. I guess that's the real question here. Where is Bradley Chubb slotted for you? You had no issue putting Nick Bosa there. Obviously, coming off the injury, it's hard to say. But is he in that 11 through 20 range?
I would say he is. I think he has a real argument to be right there. I mean, he's a top 5 picks. You saw it in college, obviously. And then in the NFL, his rookie season, he had that window of about 8 games where he had 10 sacks. And you're just going, okay, this is it. This is what you're seeing. I mean, he brings to his game. He's kind of like in my opinion, a miniature Khalil Mack. He's not quite the same athletic freak that Khalil Mack is, but he's right there just with technique, with power. And even in the 4 games that we saw him this last year before he got hurt, like he was right there. If there was better coverage on the back end, he would have had probably 4 or 5 sacks in those games. There was about 4 or 5 times in that Oakland game where he was right there. I mean, he just blew right by his guy. Easy sack. But, of course, you had him in coverage, and it was not good.
Yeah. No, that's unfortunate that turned out that way. But Bradley Chubb, I think he's definitely destined for 11th through 20th ranking, even though despite missing most of last season. But, I mean, 12 sacks his rookie year, way too good. Can't ignore that.
Yep.
So we'll see.
All right. I think we got a super chat coming in here from Manny Wise. Appreciate that there. What does the defense need to do to get off the field more often on 3rd down?
I mean, gosh, there's so many things that they could do. They could pressure better from the interior. Hopefully, Jarrell Casey will help with that. Although, going over Jarrell Casey's stats, he was actually a much better run player than pass player last season. So that's interesting, something to watch there. Cover better. I mean, the Broncos last year, after Chris Harris Jr., the cornerback position fell off a cliff. So that teams could target those opposite guys. And Chris Harris Jr. kind of looked like he lost a step as well. That's probably partially the talent around him, partially scheme. But I think all those things come together. I don't know. One of the other things, especially with 3rd down defense, is that's when teams kind of looking for those chain movers, tight ends. And I don't know if the Broncos have an answer yet on the roster, so to speak, besides the overall defense working together as far as a tight end stopper at linebacker.
Yep. Hard to disagree with any of that. All right, let's get to safety here then, because got another, maybe 2 Broncos possibly could qualify in this. I'll give a hint. I don't have both of them in my top 10.
Okay.
But I'll give my first 5 here. Mika Fitzpatrick is number 1 for me.
Okay.
I would say he had a pretty good argument for being possibly Defensive Player of the Year last year.
Yeah.
It was night and day. That Pittsburgh defense was just absolute dominant when he came to that team. Then Tyrann Mathieu from the Chiefs. As much as I hate to admit it, he had another great season. Fit well, especially in the playoffs. He really turned it on, became just such a dominant player for them there. Jamal Adams, if he wasn't playing on the Jets team, if he was playing on a team that was actually winning football games, I could see an easy argument for him being number 1. He's just that dominant. Number 4, Justin Simmons. And that's self-explanatory. All of us watch Justin Simmons. And then number 5, Harrison Smith.
Wow, Carl, I'm looking for a new podcast co-host after that list because you didn't have the number 1 safety in the NFL. Derwin freaking James, baby, number 1. I know that he missed a lot of last season. Don't care. Night and day difference when he's on the field. The Chargers went from the worst team in the NFL in covering tight ends the year before he joined the Chargers to the best team at covering tight ends in the NFL. I mean, he's special, man. I don't think there's anybody in the league that's like him. He's my number 1, and gosh, incredible. I would sing his praises all day if I could. Number 2, I think Fitzpatrick. All the things you said, versatile. I think Minka Fitzpatrick, he's probably the only safety I can think of that would be better in the Vic Fangio scheme, in my opinion, than Justin Simmons is. Number 3, I do have Justin Simmons. Number 3 safety in the NFL, in my opinion. I know that the Vic Fangio system helps him out, but Simmons does everything really well. I can't really think of a weakness in his game other than he's not that Cam Chancellor thumper, but guess what? He doesn't have to be super versatile, smart, intelligent. I think this season he's going to be even better. Number 4, I have the Honey Badger, Tyrann Mathieu. And number 5, I have a guy who's kind of a little bit slept on, but I have Kevin Byard, number 5. I think that he is really good for that Titans defense. Probably one of the few true cover 1 safeties left in the NFL, and are at least the single high safeties. And I like what he brings to the table more than a guy like Jamal Adams, who I guess I'll just keep going. Jamal Adams is my number 6. Harrison Smith, my number 7. Anthony Harris at 8, so back-to-back the Viking safeties there. Number 9, I have Eddie Jackson. And number 10, I do have Kareem Jackson coming in. I think Kareem Jackson found a home there at safety. I think he's going to be a lot like Malcolm Jenkins was before he started to lose even another step when he first went to the Eagles. It was an incredible safety, matchup safety, so to speak, for that Eagles defense. I think Kareem Jackson deserves a shout out there. So while I wasn't super, I guess, favorable for the Broncos on the offensive side of the ball, guys making the top 10, I think both those Broncos safeties deserve it and making the top 10 for me in this list.
Okay. Well, number 6, here you go, Derwin James. He did get, I know, and I thought about that, but just the injury left a little bit to be desired there this last season. And part of me is kind of going, if we did a coverage linebacker list, he'd make my top 5 on that probably. So, I mean, just the guy can make a lot of different lists just because they move him around to do a lot of different things with him. But number 6 here, just mostly because of injury. If we're not talking injury, I'd put him right there with Minka Fitzpatrick, 1, 2, fighting for that spot. Number 7, Kevin Byard. I mean, again, a very underrated player, not getting enough talk. Number 8, Earl Thomas. I thought he had a nice little bounce back season there for Baltimore. And just, he's up there in age. He's not what he used to be, but he's still doing a lot of good things. Number 9, Eddie Jackson. Had a down year last year, but I put that more on just the entire team was down. And so, of course, his stats are going to drop there a little bit. And I just realized I didn't put a number 10 here.
Kareem Jackson it is.
There it is, Kareem Jackson. And really, he does deserve to be right there in that conversation. This last season, the guy just did everything. I mean, coverage-wise, he had moments of just greatness in coverage. Run defense, I'm not sure there were many safeties that were making as many big plays as he was. He won a couple games with a couple of his plays.
That Chargers game.
Yeah.
I mean,
Houston, the Houston game, again, just made some outstanding plays. I mean, we're talking about DeAndre Hopkins just getting lit up on a legal play, very legal, and just destroyed him on that. Then, of course, he had the touchdown. I mean, how could he have a better homecoming game than what he did there in Houston? It just was one of the best games I saw of any safety this last year.
Yeah. No, I mean, the thing is, cornerback is a different type of position to play. Obviously, it's more demanded. It's a harder position. Not every player can switch from cornerback to safety very well, but I think Kareem Jackson might have extended his career 3 to 4 seasons, and the ability, that matchup ability has to come down. How versatile you have to play multiple roles in this Vic Fangio defense and safety. I think he could be a really good player for the next 2-3 seasons. When I first signed that contract and they said he's moving to safety, I was thinking, okay, 2 years, that third year, you can move on from him with a low cap hit. But I think he might be a bargain, honestly, when it comes to it. I mean, he was that good last year. So, and again, there's a little bit of synergy effect going on here because both Justin Simmons and him are really good. They make each other better. But, man, I think Jackson deserves a shout-out here. And we don't have very much time left. Carl, did you have Jarrell Casey in the top 10 for interior defensive line?
I did. I have my number 9.
Let's read your top 10. Let's see what the chat has to say about it. Let's hear your top 10 for interior defensive line.
Aaron Donald. He should be on everybody's number 1. Fletcher Cox, Chris Jones, DeForest Buckner, Cameron Hayward, Akeem Hicks, Grady Jarrett, Kenny Clark, Jarrell Casey, DJ Reader.
Okay. I have almost the exact same top 10, but I do not have Jarrell Casey. Calais Campbell. I know that he plays a little bit of both. But interior for Dallas. He mostly plays interior.
Yeah, so, that's a good one.
Okay. After that, though, there's an argument to be had. A guy that I think really came on last year and is one of the few actually got nose tackles that I absolutely love. Vita Vea is actually, I wrote him in at 11 here. I just thought he was worth a shout out. Also the heaviest player to ever catch a touchdown. Yeah.
And I almost put Jeffrey Simmons on this list.
God, he'll be there halfway through the next season.
And that was my thing I was like, he's not there because he only had half a season anyway, but he was dominant in the games that he did play. Again, this is part of why Tennessee was able to take off, as you add that kind of talent to the middle of your defense. Man, he and Jarrell Casey next to each other, it just there was probably no better interior defensive line in football once those two worked together.
Hard to say. I mean, gosh, that's a good point. And also good shout out to Kenny Clark there. Good player. That time I got it right. Not Frank Clark, Kenny Clark. So, Carl, any thoughts overall? Okay, we got a question here. Could you explain all the various defensive line techniques in the next 4 minutes? 0 would line up like right over the center. 1 would be on the A gap. Then there's I'll tweet something out. I will just tweet out a picture of where they all are at. But essentially it depends on what your front looks like and everything, and where those guys lined up. But 4 to 5 minutes, it'd be much easier with visuals instead of me talking through it.
Yeah. Unless you're and Terry Randall coming in here, hit the like. Our man Carl needs some karma. Yes, I do. That is for sure. I might have I left out. I might have broke my ankle this week playing basketball. So I'm going to test it out tonight. Going to go for a little run, see if it's holding up, if it's just bruised or if it's actually destroyed. That we'll see.
Charlie, you can't read sarcasm over text. You need that S. Oh man, Trickle spent most of an hour last night on this. Okay, well, I'm glad that I don't have to cover that.
Okay, yeah.
Guys, we got to get out of here pretty soon, like I promised. Here's the hair. Gosh, it needs to be cut. Maybe if we get a good donation or something, we'll cut it on the stream or something. That would be. That's not a good look. That is just not a good look. But guys, time for us to get out of here. Make sure you follow Carl on Twitter at Carl Dumler MHH and myself at Kendell MHH. Go over to milehighhuddle.com, an affiliate of the Maven Coalition and Sports Illustrated. Also go to iTunes, leave us a 5-star rating, subscribe to us on YouTube. Your support can help us continue to bring you our Denver Bronco deep dives. You can follow this podcast by subscribing to it wherever. We're on Spotify or everywhere where you listen to your podcasts. And if not, let us know. You can follow us on Twitter at milehighhuddle. Excuse me, I finished my drink here, so I got a little bit of a burps coming up now. And also at BTB Football Pod. For Carl, I'm Nick, wrapping up another episode of the Building the Broncos podcast. Carl, any thoughts, anecdotes before we get on out of here? Any good vibes for you?
Well, I agree with this one. You look like Carrot Top.
Oh, no.
This is our intervention, man. If you look like Carrot Top, that's not good.
Was that before or after the rehab?
That's a good question, but no. Just appreciate you guys. Another great show, and hopefully I'll be on the rest of the Tuesdays for a while. Sorry.
What's up, Carl?
I know. Life gets kind of crazy sometimes around here, but no. Just appreciate everyone. Can't wait for Tuesday, and of course we are T-minus like 16 days until they're officially supposed to arrive for camp. And we are T-minus 3 days before the franchise tag deadline comes up. So make sure you're heading over to milehighhuddle.com because there's a lot that's going to be happening over these next few weeks. Even though it is kind of a little bit of a dead time, it's going to amp up real quick.
Fingers crossed. So, all right, guys. No wonder the hat looks so big. I mean, guys, it's just – I'm sorry to make it about this. This is not a good – maybe next time I should just do like the pigtails. If it wasn't for the head thing, I'd look like Ace Ventura when he's like got the white devil and all the wild, that hair curl kind of thing.
Yeah.
I got that going on. So, guys, we're going to get out of here. Appreciate y'all. Have a good rest of your weekend. Stay safe and go Broncos.